I was standing at Pier 91 in Seattle, suitcase by my boot, sunscreen still fresh on my face, when my phone buzzed. A text from my daughter. Dad, there's been a change of plans. You're not coming. We want this to be just family. Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I stared at that message, and for a second my brain refused to process the words. The morning breeze from Elliott Bay smelled of salt and diesel, the way it always did when I used to work night shifts down at the port of Tacoma. Seagulls screamed overhead. Families were lining up to board the Alaska cruise ship behind me, carrying matching luggage and wide smiles. I thought I'd be one of them. 63 years old, widowed, retired union electrician. I'd raised my daughter Lily by myself after her mother passed. All I ever wanted was to see her happy. When she opened her little decor shop in Ballard, I used my own LLC to co-sign the lease. Banks liked my credit score more than hers. Just temporary, Dad, she'd said, kissing my cheek. You'll always be part of this business. That morning, I wore the same blue mariner's cap I'd had since she was in grade school. She bought it for me with her first paycheck. I'd saved for months to surprise her with this trip. 2 adjoining cabins, balcony view, prepaid drink package, the works. Cost me close to $9,000. You deserve to relax, Dad, she said when we booked it. I didn't know she'd later decide I didn't deserve to go. I looked up at the gangway, and there they were. Lily, her husband Evan, and my 8-year-old grandson Jake. They looked right past me. Evan had his arm around her, laughing, carrying a duffel bag with the same cruise tag I had printed at home. Jake was holding the new plush seal I hadn't seen before. They didn't wave, didn't look down. It wasn't anger I felt at first. It was confusion. Maybe she'd sent it to the wrong person. Maybe there'd been a ticketing issue. I texted back, "What do you mean, sweetheart? My boarding pass is right here." The 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No reply. That's when my heart sank. I could have caused a scene. Could have marched up that ramp and demanded answers. But something about the way they avoided looking down told me everything. They knew I was there. They just didn't want to see me. I sat down on a bench near the terminal, the kind that smells faintly of wet metal and spilled coffee. Around me, families were hugging, laughing, handing off passports. One dad was trying to juggle his kid and a Starbucks cup, and I thought, that used to be me. For the first time, I realized how far I'd drifted from the center of her life. I watched the ship start boarding. My phone buzzed again. One more text from Lily. "Please don't make this harder, Dad. We just need space. We'll explain later." That word, space, hit harder than any insult. Space from what? From the man who paid her tuition? Who fixed her water heater last winter? Who co-signed her business loan because her husband's credit score was in the 500s? My hands trembled as I picked up my suitcase. It felt heavier now, like the weight wasn't from clothes, but from every memory I'd carried for her. I walked away from the port without looking back. The taxi driver asked if I was flying home early. I said, change of plans. At home, I made a pot of coffee, strong enough to peel paint. I needed to think. On my desk sat a blue folder. Belltown Home Decor LLC, the one I'd set up when Lily opened the store. Inside were invoices, leases, receipts. I noticed something I hadn't paid attention to before. Every single asset, furniture, fixtures, point-of-sale system, was purchased under my company name, paid through my AMEX. I turned on my old desktop, the one with the noisy fan, logged into the shared business email we'd once used. She'd stopped checking it years ago after she started using her professional domain. In the drafts folder, I found an unsent message titled Transfer of Ownership, dated 3 months ago, addressed to her lawyer. My name was nowhere in it. My stomach dropped. So that was the plan. When the last loan payment cleared, they'd quietly remove me. Just a formality, Dad. I could almost hear her voice. I'd heard that tone before, years ago, when she borrowed my credit card for a college deposit and said, I'll pay you back next paycheck. She never did. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Maybe I'd been blind because I wanted to be. Maybe she wasn't cruel, just comfortable. Comfortable assuming I'd always be there to absorb her mistakes. The clock read 2:07 p.m. I opened my phone and scrolled to my contacts until I found one I hadn't called in years. Cynthia Barr, attorney. I'd helped her rewire her house back in 2009. She told me, "No, if you ever need legal help, Jack, you've got my number." I took a breath and pressed call. "Cynthia, it's Jack Hill. Remember that business I co-signed for my daughter?" Pause. "Of course. What's going on? I need to know what my legal options are." There was a long silence on the other end. Then she said softly, "Jack, are you sure you want to open that door?" I looked out the window. The cruise ship's horn echoed faintly across the bay, a distant reminder of the vacation I was supposed to be on. "Yeah," I said, "I'm sure." What I didn't tell her, what I couldn't even admit to myself yet, was that this wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about something much simpler, much colder. It was about respect. And that's when I opened the blue folder again and saw one detail that changed everything. When I opened that blue folder again, something caught my eye. A small yellow post-it stuck to the last page, written in Lily's handwriting, neat, sharp, confident. "Once Dad finishes the balloon payment, we'll transfer ownership. We'll, not I'll. We. Meaning her and Evan, not me." For a few seconds I just stared at it. The room felt smaller. The hum of the fridge in the kitchen sounded louder, almost mocking. That note wasn't a reminder. It was a confession. They'd planned it. All those months of "thank you, Dad" were just placeholders until I signed away what I built. It's strange how betrayal doesn't always come with shouting or slammed doors. Sometimes it arrives as a sticky note in your own handwriting folder. I took a long sip of my now cold coffee and grabbed my reading glasses. Beneath that post-it was an unsigned draft letter dated 3 months ago, same day as that transfer of ownership email I'd found earlier. It was addressed to Belltown Property Group, the landlord. The letter requested a name change on the lease from Hill Electrical LLC to Evan and Lily Home Decor LLC. It even included a digital signature, mine, except it wasn't my signature. Before we continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. I want to know if things like this happen where you live too, because I can't be the only one who's ever been blindsided by family. I pulled out my old paperwork binder from the filing cabinet, the one I used when I applied for my contractor's license years ago, compared the two signatures. The shape was right, but the pressure was off. The J too flat, the tail of the K cut early. Whoever did it had traced it. My stomach twisted. I called Cynthia again. "I think someone forged my signature on a lease document." Her voice was calm but sharp. "Do you have proof?" "Yeah, my old files. Originals with timestamps, and the digital copy from her email account." She paused. "Then, Jack, you're not just dealing with betrayal. You're dealing with fraud." I spent the rest of the afternoon scanning everything. Receipts, contracts, even screenshots of old texts. Cynthia told me to keep it quiet. "Don't tip them off," she warned. "Let me verify the filings first." That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the balcony of my Tacoma condo, watching container ships pass across Commencement Bay, their lights gliding silently like slow-moving ghosts. I remembered the nights I'd come home from a 12-hour shift, covered in oil and salt, and still packed Lily's lunches before school. The nights she'd wait up for me just to say goodnight. Where had that girl gone? Morning came gray and wet, typical Pacific Northwest weather. Cynthia called. "Jack, I checked." The document was never submitted to the county, thank God, but they did try to pre-fill it through a third-party portal. Someone used a scanned version of your signature. Who? I can't say legally, but the metadata points to a Gmail account under Evan's name. That was the moment it shifted. The sadness hardened into something steady, controlled, like flipping a breaker and watching the current redirect. I spent the next few days quietly auditing everything tied to the business. My Amex statements showed multiple vendor charges that didn't match any of our supply lists. $9,800 here, $2,100 there. Payments labeled consulting, fixtures, marketing, all routed to Evan's Venmo. He'd been siphoning from my card for months, and the craziest part, he probably thought I'd never notice. Because I was Dad, the safe, naive one. So I did what electricians do best. I traced the wires back to the source. Logged into the business Instagram. I'd set it up originally. My email was still the recovery address. In the ad account, I found something wild. They'd been promoting a new brand name, E&L Home Living, their new family-owned identity with zero mention of me or the original LLC. That's when I realized the cruise wasn't just a vacation. It was a distraction. They'd planned to finish cutting me out while I was at sea. I called Cynthia again. I want to know my legal rights. All of them, she sighed, typing fast in the background. Jack, you still legally own every asset under the original LLC. Inventory, furniture, even the brand name. They never completed the transfer, so I can take it back? Yes, but once you do, there's no going back emotionally. She was right. Revenge, even lawful revenge, changes things. Still, I started making a list. Assets, serial numbers, proof of purchase, and one more thing, a spare key. I'd installed a junction box in the shop myself when we built the place. Behind it, taped with electrical tape, was the backup key. I'd left it there 5 years ago in case of emergencies. Funny how the emergencies you plan for are never the ones that show up. By Sunday night, everything was in motion. Cynthia filed a UCC-1 lien, public notice that all business property belonged to my LLC. The landlord got a certified letter about their arrears. The trademark for Belltown Home Decor was filed under my name. And quietly, I downloaded every photo and customer contact list from their database. No yelling, no confrontation, just quiet precision. But as I sat there sealing the envelope with the filings, a wave of guilt hit me. Was I really about to pull the floor out from under my own daughter? Maybe I'd failed her somehow, worked too much, loved too hard, given too easily. Then I remembered that text at the port. You're not family. My fingers stopped shaking. When I finally shut down the computer, I saw my reflection in the dark screen. I didn't look angry. I looked awake. And the next morning, when Cynthia called and said, "The filing's official. They can't move a single item without your consent," I just nodded and whispered, "Good," because they were still on that cruise, and I had 10 days before they came back. When Monday morning came, the sky over Tacoma was the color of wet concrete. I'd barely slept. My coffee had gone cold twice before I realized I hadn't even taken a sip. 10 days. That's how long their cruise would last. 10 days to take back everything they thought I'd never notice. At 8:40 a.m., I drove toward Ballard. The streets were slick from a night of drizzle, traffic crawling, delivery vans double parked in front of the shops. I parked across from the boutique, Belltown Home Decor, the one I helped build nail by nail. Through the window, the place looked peaceful, still. The closed for inventory sign I'd taped there last night fluttered slightly from the air vent. The sheriff's deputy arrived first, his cruiser lights off, but his uniform crisp. Behind him, Cynthia's assistant pulled up with 2 movers and a clipboard full of item numbers. "You sure you want to do this personally?" the deputy asked. "I built this place," I said quietly. "I'll take it apart myself." He nodded and unlocked the door. The smell hit me first. Vanilla candles, new wood polish, and a faint trace of the eucalyptus spray Lily always used before customers came in. For a second, I almost turned around. Almost. Then I saw the framed photo on the counter, Lily and Evan smiling in front of the store's ribbon-cutting ceremony. My hands tightened. My name wasn't anywhere on that wall. We started cataloging everything. Reclaimed barnwood tables, handmade shelves, the point-of-sale iMac, every single pendant light I'd installed myself. All bought through my LLC, all mine again. The movers wrapped each piece in bubble wrap while I logged the serial numbers. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like surgery. Halfway through, the deputy's radio crackled and he stepped outside. I followed. A crowd had started forming across the street. 2 neighboring shop owners whispering, one filming on her phone. I caught bits of conversation. "Isn't that Lily's dad?" "He's repossessing the store?" Someone else murmured. "That's cold." I pretended not to hear. But every word sank deep, heavier than the furniture we were hauling out. By noon, the last pallet was loaded. I locked the door and handed the keys to the deputy for return to the landlord. Cynthia's assistant smiled politely. "Everything's legally sound, Mr. Hill." "You did it?" "Did it." Such simple words for something that left a crater in my chest. When I got home, I sat in the silence of my condo. Outside, rain whispered against the windows. I could almost hear the ship horn in the distance, though it was probably my imagination. Somewhere out there, my daughter was sipping margaritas on deck, believing her family business was safe. That night, I wrote the letter. "Lily, while you were away, I learned what family means to you. I hope you find the same clarity I did. Your business remains yours in spirit, but not in name or assets. I will not press charges, but I will no longer fund deceit. Your items are safe in storage until August 1st. After that, the lease expires. Dad, I folded it neatly and placed it in an envelope on the kitchen counter, just like she used to leave me notes before school. The next few days passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Cynthia handled the filings. The landlord was grateful I cleared the rent arrears. One afternoon, I stopped by the storage unit to check the inventory. Rows of furniture stood under fluorescent lights, each tagged and numbered, like ghosts of a dream that wasn't mine anymore. That's when I noticed something taped to one of the wrapped mirrors. A sticky note in Lily's handwriting. "Dad, don't worry. We'll pay you back someday, someday." The same word she used when she borrowed money for her first apartment, when she said she'd cover the insurance, when she promised to call more often. I sat down on an empty crate and laughed, a dry, tired sound that didn't feel like me. That night, Cynthia called again. "The filings went through. Trademarks officially under your name. You're in full control. What happens next?" I asked. "Next?" She hesitated. "They'll come home, and then they'll call you." She was right. On the 8th day, my phone rang. Evan's number. I didn't answer. On the 9th, a text from Lily. "Dad, what did you do?" "We got an eviction notice. The landlord says the lease isn't in our name. Please, just call me I didn't." But on the 10th day, I drove to the pier again. The ship had just returned, white hull glistening in the weak afternoon sun. Families waved, hugged, dragged suitcases through puddles. I parked a block away and waited. At 5:17 p.m., I saw them. Lily, tanned and smiling, pulling Jake's hand. Evan scrolling through his phone. She looked happy for a split second until she checked her messages. Her smile froze. She showed the screen to Evan, who stopped walking. Even from a distance, I saw it. The confusion, the shock, the panic. I didn't feel joy. Not really. Just a quiet finality. I started the truck, ready to drive home. But before I left, I looked back one last time. Lily was standing at the curb, phone pressed to her ear, looking around as if expecting me to appear. I didn't. Because for the first time in decades, I wasn't rushing to fix what she broke. And as I merged onto I-5 toward Tacoma, I knew there was no turning back now. What she would find when she finally walked into that empty store. That would be her lesson to learn. When I woke up the next morning, the phone was still buzzing every few minutes. Missed calls, texts, voicemails, all from Lily. I didn't play a single one. There was nothing left to explain. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, the kind so bitter it clears your head, and stared out the window. The sky was pale, washed out, the kind of gray that only the Pacific Northwest can make look beautiful. My reflection in the glass looked like a stranger, steady eyes, calm hands. It hit me that this was the first morning in years I didn't start the day worrying about someone else. At 9:17 a.m., the doorbell rang. I already knew who it was. Through the peephole, I saw Lily. She looked nothing like the woman who boarded that cruise 10 days ago. Her hair was messy, face pale, makeup streaked from crying. She stood there gripping her phone like it was the last piece of solid ground. I opened the door, but didn't invite her in. "Dad," she said, voice trembling, "what did you do?" For a long moment, I just looked at her. My daughter, the same little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest after I came home from night shifts, now standing in front of me like a stranger, begging for mercy. "I enforce the law," I said quietly, "something you and your husband forgot to do." Her lip quivered. "You sold everything. The store, the furniture, our lives, Dad." "No," I said. "My store, my furniture, my life savings. You just used it." She started pacing on the porch, the rain misting in her hair. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain. It was Evan's idea. I didn't know he was—" I cut her off. "You knew. You signed the drafts. You watched the payments come out of my account and said nothing. You don't get to claim ignorance just because you didn't hold the pen." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "You've ruined us." I sighed. "No, Lily. You ruined yourself." I just stopped cushioning the fall behind her. A black SUV pulled up. Evan stepped out, sunglasses on, jaw tight. He walked up like he was storming into a courtroom. "This is insane, Jack. You can't just steal a business from your own daughter." I almost laughed. "Steal? That's rich coming from the guy who forged my signature and used my credit card like an ATM." His face went red. "You can't prove that." "Already did," I said, holding up a manila envelope. "Signed affidavits, screenshots, bank statements, and a fraud report. You'll be hearing from the investigators by tomorrow morning." Lily gasped. "Dad, no. Please don't get the police involved." "I'm not pressing charges," I said. "Not yet. But the lien's filed. The assets are mine. The trademark, too. You can start fresh if you want, just not with what you took from me." For a second, she looked like she might collapse right there on the porch. Then she whispered, "I never thought you'd do this to your own family." I looked her straight in the eye. Neither did I. The rain had turned heavier now, dripping off the edge of the awning. The sound filled the silence between us. She turned away, and for the first time, I didn't stop her. Evan followed, muttering something about lawyers. When they drove off, I leaned against the doorway and exhaled slowly. My hands were steady, but my heart wasn't. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like amputation. That night, I went to the storage facility one last time. Walked down the cold, echoing aisles, lined with wooden crates and shrink-wrapped furniture. Every object was a reminder of how easily generosity becomes entitlement. I opened one crate and found the handmade sign Lily painted when the shop first opened. Belltown Home Decor. Family-owned and handcrafted with love. I ran my fingers across the faded paint. The irony was almost too much to bear. Then, just as I was about to close it, I spotted something tucked underneath the sign, a small photo frame wrapped in paper. Inside was an old picture of me holding Lily as a baby, both of us covered in sawdust from the workshop. Someone had written on the back in a child's scrawl, "Daddy builds things, I help." That broke me. I sat on the floor for a long time, that photo clutched in my hand, the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Maybe revenge isn't supposed to feel good. Maybe it's just supposed to feel fair. The next day, Cynthia called. The sale went through. New buyers wired the money this morning. Full market value. You'll see the deposit in your account by 2 p.m. I thanked her and hung up. I took the check to the bank that afternoon, nearly $320,000 after paying off debts. The teller smiled and asked if I wanted to open a high-yield savings account. I shook my head. "No, ma'am. I've got something better in mind." 2 weeks later, I signed papers for a cabin overlooking the Puget Sound. Small, quiet, enough space for one man and his thoughts. I spent the first night there sitting on the porch, listening to the wind moving through the pines. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt earned, and that's when I realized something. Revenge had never really been about taking something from them. It was about taking something back for myself. I looked down at my phone. Another text from Lily. This one shorter. "Dad, please, can we talk?" I typed back, "Not yet." Then I turned the phone face down, leaned back in the chair, and watched the tide roll in. Because I knew sooner or later she'd come to understand what I had to learn the hard way. That love without respect isn't family. And respect, once lost, has to be earned back, one painful tide at a time. A week passed after I moved into the cabin. No noise, no deadlines, no phone buzzing every few minutes. Just the sound of the wind off Puget Sound and the creak of cedar boards settling in the night. I thought maybe that was the end of it. The store gone, the accounts settled, everyone finally learning where they stood. But life has a funny way of testing whether you've really found peace. One morning, Cynthia called. "Jack, you might want to sit down," she said. "Evan just filed a complaint with the State Fraud Division claiming you forged his signature on the business sale. He's saying you forced them out under false pretenses." I let out a long breath. "He's really doing this?" "I've seen people dig their own graves slower," she replied. "But don't worry, we have everything documented." Still, I couldn't help but laugh, half in disbelief, half in pity. The man who stole from me was now trying to rewrite the ending. 2 weeks later, we had a mediation hearing downtown, a gray, sterile conference room with fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired. Evan walked in wearing a suit he clearly couldn't afford anymore, jaw clenched, confidence cracked. Lily followed, quieter, smaller somehow. The state investigator, a middle-aged woman with a calm face, opened the folder in front of her. "Mr. Hill," she said to me, "I've reviewed your filings. All assets, purchases, and transfers were under your LLC. The lien was properly executed. The only irregularity is this." She held up a document, one of the fake lease transfers with my forged signature. "This came from his computer." She turned toward Evan. "Would you like to explain?" His face went red. "That's not proof I forged anything." She tilted her head slightly. "The metadata is time-stamped. It was uploaded from your IP address the same day Mr. Hill reported misuse of funds. That's obstruction and attempted fraud." Lily looked at him, eyes wide. "Evan, you told me Dad made that up." He didn't answer. In that moment, it all came crashing down. The lies, the arrogance, the fake confidence. His empire of excuses burned to ash in front of everyone. The investigator turned to me. "Mr. Hill, would you like to pursue criminal charges?" For a long second I thought about it. Every sleepless night, every sacrifice, every time I let someone else's comfort weigh more than my own dignity. Then I looked at Lily. Her hands were shaking. She wasn't a victim, but she wasn't innocent either. "No," I said finally. "Let the record show the truth." "That's enough." Evan slammed his chair back. "You think you've won?" "You just ruined your own family." I met his glare calmly. "No, son. You did that when you tried to steal it." The investigator ended the meeting with a firm note. "Mr. Evans, we'll be forwarding this to the district attorney's office for review. You'll be contacted soon." 3 weeks later, he was charged with 2 counts of fraud and 1 of forgery. Nothing dramatic. No handcuffs at dawn, just a slow, humiliating collapse. Word spread among their business contacts. His credit line was frozen. The family man image he loved so much evaporated overnight. Lily called me after the indictment. Her voice was small. "Dad, I didn't know it would go this far." "It went exactly as far as it needed to," I said. "Actions have weight." "You can't keep pretending they don't." She started crying softly. "I'm so sorry." For the first time, I believed her. Months passed. Fall turned the evergreens gold, then bare. I rebuilt my routine. morning coffee by the window, walks down the gravel road, quiet dinners with neighbors who didn't ask questions. I even started building again, small pieces of furniture from leftover wood, things that were mine, crafted by my own hands. Then one Sunday afternoon, I got a letter, handwritten, from Lily. Dad, you were right. We built our lives on convenience and called it love. Evan's gone. The store's gone. But maybe that's what it took to see the truth. I'm starting over. No shortcuts this time. I hope someday you'll visit, not as an investor. As my father, I sat there on the porch for a long time, the letters shaking slightly in my hands. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in copper and rose. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't in a long while. Not anger, not sorrow, just release. Justice hadn't come from revenge or punishment. It came from seeing the truth laid bare and walking away without bitterness. If you ask me what I learned, I'd tell you this. Sometimes peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from knowing you've finally stopped letting people rewrite your story. That's what freedom really feels like. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you loved just to find yourself again? Tell me in the comments. I read every story because sometimes the hardest battles, the quiet ones, are the ones that save us. And if you've made it this far, thank you for listening to mine. Stay a while. There's more to tell.